Hello, welcome back to my channel. I do have some new people here, so if you're new, welcome. My name is Christine. I generally like to talk about and read dark and disturbing things, so I am mainly a horror reader, but I do dabble in some other genres as well, and then talk about them here. Today, we are going to be talking about what I've read so far in June. This is my mid-June reading check-in. So I have my handy dandy reading journal here so I can go down the list of what I read. I generally just go in order of the way that I read things and talk about them there. That way things are kind of mixed up. So I'm not talking about all negative things or all positive things all at once. And so far I have read 7 books so far this June. 3 of them are books that I owned. Actually, I should say I read 6 books and I DNF'd 1. So we'll be talking about that in a little bit. But 3 of these books I previously owned before the start of the year. If you've been following along, I've been trying the Read What You Own challenge, except you're really not supposed to buy new books until you read a certain number of your own books. I have not followed that and I'm fine with it, but I am still trying to read 100 books that I previously owned so that, you know, we could cycle through the books, not just read the new ones and leave the other ones to collect dust. So the very first book I read was not a book I owned, but it was a library book that I got on my e-reader, and that was Wretched Waterpark by Kiersten White. I have read 2 other books previously by Kiersten White. I read Hyde and I read Mr. Magic. I believe I gave both of these a 3.5, rounded down to 3 for Goodreads, and this is my 3rd time reading a Kiersten White. This one's a little different because this is a middle grade book. As you could probably tell, I'm going to pop the picture up there. And this one is part of a series. So this is a part of her Sinister Summer series. And if you see me looking down, I'm just looking down at my laptop because I've got the other titles pulled up here. There are 5 books in total, and I read the first one. So that was Wretched Waterpark. Book 2 is Vampiric Vacation. Book 3 is Camp Creepy. Book 4 is Menacing Manor, and book 5 is Haunted Holiday. They sound just so cute. They remind me a lot of that series called A Series of Unfortunate Events, and that we have 3 children, 2 of which are twins, and then an older sister. They are dropped off at their aunt's house, who they don't really know, and the aunt is so out of touch with children. She has no idea how to take care of children, how to entertain children, and in that way, it sort of reminds me of A Series of Unfortunate Events. So in this particular installment, we have they get dropped off at their aunt's while their parents are off on vacation or doing something else. And because their aunt doesn't really know how to take care of them, or she doesn't even realize that they need to be fed on a regular basis, she gets them a week-long pass at a local water park where she just drops them off every day and picks them up at the end of the day and just lets them do their thing. At first, they are so excited because they think they're going to have all-you-can-eat churros and just have a great time. But this water park is a little different. First of all, there's hardly anybody there, which at first they think is cool because they'll have hardly any lines to wait in. They get to half the park to themselves almost. There's really only a couple other families there, but they soon realize that things are a little different. Instead of like the inner tubes to go down the slides, they are coffin-shaped boxes that they ride down in. They are told when they go down the slides to cross their arms over like this and close their eyes and go down. The slides themselves look like they're coming out of the mouth of a gargoyle and riding down their tongue. So all of this, you know, it's my vibe. I liked it. It ended up turning into kind of a mystery that the twins need to solve, as certain people that work at this water park start going missing, and they try to solve this mystery. I thought it was a really fun and unique idea. I do think a little more could have been done with it. I don't usually like to rate middle grade books because they're not really written for me, but I kind of get 3-star vibes from this one. However, I will say that I will probably continue to give this series a shot because when I look on Goodreads, that is like the lowest rated one of them all. So maybe it just took, you know, a book to kind of get things going. And it wasn't a bad book at all. It just, I think that we could have had a little bit more. The mystery kind of got drawn out a little bit, but I still had a good time, and it fit my horror water theme that I was trying to go for this month. The next book I read, I ended up listening to. I listened to this one on Everand, and that is Strange Sally Diamond by Liz Nugent. So this one is more of a mystery slash thriller type book. I feel like mystery comes before thriller in this one. It wasn't like super fast paced with all kinds of things happening. I had heard some other people talking about this that really liked it, so I had it on my TBR and decided just to give it a shot one day. So I ended up listening to this, and I really enjoyed that because this takes place in Ireland, and you get to hear Irish accents. So sometimes it's the small things. I like hearing, you know, when something takes place in Scotland or Ireland or England, I like hearing the real accents. So I have a good time with that. This one starts off really crazy, where we have a character named Sally who lives a very secluded life with her father, kind of in the middle of nowhere, and her father is very ill and he passes away. Like, this is not a spoiler, this all happens right away. So he passes away, and he has always told her, like, hey, just put me out with the bins, like put me out in the trash when I go. And Sally is probably neurodivergent, and she takes things very literally. She is a very blunt person. She says what she means what she says, and she thinks that everybody else also does that. And since she has such a secluded lifestyle, she doesn't have a lot of exposure to other people. She is mainly just grown up with her parents. Her mom had passed away several years before this, and so she's only had her father. So when he passes away, she puts him out in the garbage. It puts him in the compost like she thinks she's supposed to do. And she's just like, all right, another day's work done. Let me watch my television shows now. Just a very matter of fact like that. And she comes to find out that she wasn't supposed to do that. And it kind of opens up this whole background story about where she comes from, a lot of her history that she doesn't remember from when she was a child. Like, I think her memories start when she was 8 or 10ish, and we start to slowly uncover what happened to her as a child, and why she is the way she is, and what she's going to do with her life moving forward, how she's going to accept what happened to her, and just really try. A lot of this is spent with her just trying to fit in with society in a way that she can handle. I started off really liking this book because I found this character so refreshing. I am a very blunt person, and I don't like having to read between the lines. I don't like sugarcoating things. I just find it to be a waste of time, and I don't understand why people do it. So I find when a character is super honest like that and just very blunt, I find it so refreshing. And I just felt like I kind of understood Sally in a way. Obviously, I have not gone through what she's gone through, but I could get her. I would hang out with her silently in a room and just watch TV with her or do whatever, and not feel the need to fill. I would not feel the need to fill anything with words that don't need to be said. Small talk. I never quite knew where the story was going, and it was interesting to slowly reveal all the things that happened, and you realize just how much one person can affect so many people with their abuse, with their physical abuse, emotional abuse, manipulation, and just how many people that can reach is crazy, because all of this stemmed from one person, and we kind of, more and more people kind of come into the mix. We learn about more possible family members and friends, and we just get to see how messed up they are because of one person that just really destroyed this family. So I don't know, it was unlike anything that I usually read. I think I would give it a 3.5 star, but on the higher side, like closer to a 4. It's just not my usual genre, and I kind of forgot that I had read it. So it's, while Sally holds like a a place in my heart. I don't know that the entire story does, but it was fairly good. Yeah, I'm going to stick with 3.5. The next book I read was The Woods Are Dark by Richard Lehman. If you've been following along, I have been reading a Richard Lehman every month to kind of follow along with Kelsey from Slime and Slashers, and it has not been going super well for me. I will say the last few months have kind of been duds, and I just really wanted this one to work out. This one starts off really solid. Richard Lehman, I will admit, has a great way of sucking in a reader right away because he kind of just goes straight balls to the walls crazy and never stops usually throughout the whole book, which is kind of the appeal of his books, right? Like they're just so bonkers, they're so weird, and sometimes maybe he goes a little too far. Sometimes it's offensive, a lot of the times. Yeah, that's kind of what you're getting into when you get into Richard Lehman. So this one starts off really strong where we have a group of, or two friends, two girls that are like kind of off on a hiking trip together, like a little girls trip, a road trip, and they stop in a diner and, you know, just a little pit stop after seeing something very disturbing in the road, I will say. So they're driving in the middle of nowhere, they see something very disturbing, and then they just decide they're going to continue on their way. They're going to stop, get something to eat, and just pretend nothing happened. Well, when they go to leave, they find out they can't leave. Then we're also following another family who is on vacation. We have a dad, a mom, their daughter, and her boyfriend. They stop at a little hotel, motel type situation, and again, things are super creepy. They find out they're not leaving either. So this starts off just very strong with, oh my God, like I can't imagine going to leave a diner and all of a sudden the doors are locked, you can't get out. So these people are taken as like sacrifices to the woods where they are just left there to fend for themselves, and things are just kind of bonkers. I will say that I enjoyed this more than the last few Richard Lehmans that I've read. It's not my favorite. Midnight's Lair is still my favorite. I kind of have a theory that the first one you read is always your favorite. So I don't know if I'll ever top that for me, because maybe it just takes you by surprise and you don't really know what's coming next. And after you've read a few, you kind of know what's going to happen in some of these. So I feel like the intro was done so well, and that Richard Lehman really could have drawn out the suspense of after the people are dropped off at the woods, then to what happens next, which I won't really go into it any further because I already feel like I've spoiled enough of it. But I feel like he really could have amped up the creep factor by having us be in their heads and not knowing what's going on, and just kind of drag that out a little bit. But instead, you know, he turns it up to 10 and just leaves it there. There is no different speeds for Lehman. They just kind of go all one way. There's always essay. I think there's been essay in every single book I've read. And because I come to expect it, maybe it's starting to sort of feel less important to me. But there were a few little twists that I found funny enough that I was like, all right, I like what you did there. I don't want to say too much, but if you're in Kelsey's Discord, I have put my full thoughts there, and then I've kind of like covered them with spoilers so you could see. I don't want to say too much, but there were parts I thought were kind of funny and super gross and funny at the same time. The dad in this book, though, was so gross. Like this is kind of another recurring theme I've noticed in Richard Lehman books, is where the dad just likes to openly talk about sex with his teenage daughter, and not in a healthy way, like in a creepy way. And the dad in this one is constantly talking about it, thinking about it, comparing other girls or women to his daughter, and it was pretty gross. Not my thing. But overall, I feel like I have to rate this on a Lehman scale. So on a Lehman scale, this is a 3.5 star. Not great, not horrible, slightly better than the average that I've read so far. I had a decent time with it. I think it could have been better, but it was all right for Lehman. All right, the next book I read was a book that I recently picked up and I was just too excited I had to read it, and that was Someone You Can Build a Nest In by John Wiswell. I'll get it right. John Wiswell. Um, I knew nothing about it. I saw this cover. We got like a witch, we got tentacles, and I was like, holy shit, what is that? And I opened it up and it said it was about an amorphous blob that is just living its life when all of a sudden someone is trying to kill it. Here, I don't even know if I could do it justice. I'm just going to read a portion of this. So she is a shapeshifter who happily resides as an amorphous lump in a swamp of a ruined manor. Her rest is interrupted by impolite monster hunters. She constructs her body fit for reabsorbing the remains of the past meals. So she can like draw in people that she kills or just other objects into her blobness and turn it to look however she wants. So she can take a dead body and move his jawbone to fit her jawbone, like a skull, to make it look like she has a skull. In this case, I think she uses like a bear trap for teeth and a chain for a spine. And I was like, holy crap, I cannot wait to read this. I've never read a book where a main character was an amorphous blob shapeshifter thing. I don't think I've read any book that has that as a character at all. And eventually she ends up kind of falling for developing feelings, I guess, for a woman that she comes in contact with that kind of helps save her when she is hurt. But then turns out she finds out that this woman is actually also hunting her and doesn't realize that she is the monster. So I was super excited for this. Okay. I love the first third of this book because we're kind of getting to know our character. We're getting to know our blob monster thing and all of the things that she's capable of doing. That was cool. The second 2/3 of the book, I'm not gonna lie, I was so disappointed and I was actually just forcing myself to finish the book. I was really bored. And the only reason I didn't DNF it is because I DNF'd a book just right before this, which I'll talk about next. And I was like, I don't want to DNF 2 books in a row. Plus I paid full price for this. That's also, you know, that's always a factor in deciding if you DNF. I was so bored. There were so many things that I felt like were catering to, I'm gonna get myself in trouble. I feel like I was catering to a younger generation than myself in that, how do I say this without ruffling feathers? Sometimes your trauma does not need to define you. And when the entire book is about your trauma, but not, the book is not actually about your trauma. It's like if a book was about your trauma and working through it and learning from it, okay, cool, I understand. But when that is your characteristic, like that should not be your only characteristic. Like, I'm traumatized by my family treats me like shit. That should not be your whole personality. And I feel like that's what was going on with this. There are also interactions between these two characters where every time they touch, and I don't even mean in a sexual way, just anytime they touch, like there is consent given or consent requested to be touched. And the first time I read it, I was like, okay. But then when it came up like 3 or 4 more times, I'm like, so if you're in a relationship with someone at this point, I don't feel like you need to ask consent every time you touch their shoulder or hold their hand or something like that. Maybe this just isn't written for me. Maybe I'm too old, but I was just kind of rolling my eyes. I always said I'd be honest here, but yeah, I don't want to upset anybody, but I don't think if I am in a somewhat of a relationship that someone needs to ask me for consent to touch me in just like the briefest of manners. I don't get it. I don't get the trauma defining you as a person, and I don't know. On top of it, it was just boring. I really wanted this lovely sapphic relationship, and it just didn't feel right to me. It really just did not feel right to me. I don't know, maybe this author is working through something that he had to get out, and that's fine. It didn't work for me. I'm gonna give it 3 stars. It may actually be 2.5, but for the character alone and the idea of that main character that I love so much, that is like the majority of this. The bulk of the story was honestly just kind of boring, and it just dragged out forever. And sorry, this is probably going to be on my biggest disappointments of the year. Sorry to do this back to back, but the next up is the book that I ended up DNFing. This has been on my shelf a while, and I want to preface this with saying that I think that once I became an adult reader again, like, and I say that because you go through phases as a reader, and when you're in school, when I was in college, I didn't have time to read. When I got out of college, I started reading again, and I really got into vampire books. The Anita Blake series, the Sookie Stackhouse series, all the stuff before Twilight, like anything that had a vampire in it, I was game. Like, I was looking for more vampire books. So when I saw this, I picked it up, and look, this is chonky. I was a little hesitant, not only because the size, but because I had heard things about this author from another series that I thought, I don't know that that's for me. Do I really even want to get involved in liking something if this is problematic? I think eventually I saw this on sale and picked it up, and I had a chance to buddy read this with someone. So we start reading it, and look, I'm tabbing it. Ooh, can you see? I'm tabbing it. I'm taking it seriously. This is a gorgeous copy, by the way. I mean, this is just the regular copy, but there are illustrations throughout this book. Let me find one that's appropriate. Like, look at that. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So I'm going to tell you what this is about, even though I never fully got to what this is about. It starts off a very interview with the vampire. We have our main character. Our main character, Gabriel, seems like he is trapped in this tower. He's being held prisoner, and he has information that like another vampire wants. And so a lesser vampire is sent in to kind of question him and ask him about, I think, the whereabouts of this chalice. This chalice that I think could mean something bad for vampires in general and their livelihood, deadlyhood. And he's like, tell me about this chalice. I want to know. And so he starts telling his story. He's like, no. Go back to the beginning. And we literally go back to like the day he was born and talk about his life from his freaking birth to find out about this chalice. I really just started to get the feeling that this author loves to hear himself talk. So he's telling us about his history, his family, what happened to his sisters, and how he became what he is today, which is like this hybrid vampire creature thing, fighting off evil, sort of. I won't go into it because it might be kind of spoilery, but let me just tell you, I ended off at page 150, and I never really got to the plot because it is a lot of building. It is like looking back at him from way back when he was like 18, and then it will skip ahead to I think when he's like in his 30s, and then we keep checking back in with this vampire scene. And the vampire that is like interviewing him is super annoying because anytime he uses any kind of word, any term, he'll be like, what does that mean? And Gabriel will be like, you know what that means. Like literally one of the words was fledgling. He's like, what's a fledgling? What do you think a fledgling is? And then he's like, well, you need to tell me what it is. Please break it down for me because I'm writing all this down and I need to have it in here. I was like, so we need to like break down certain words for you just because you don't understand. It's a whole weird thing. My main problem, and the person I was buddy reading this with, they tapped out at page like 100. They're like, I'm out. And I gave it another 50 pages, and I was like, I asked some people that I knew had read this, and they're like, if you're not into this style by now, you're not going to be into this. And I appreciate that, honestly, because there is so much. Okay, so it just starts off like very much Interview with the Vampire, and then it quickly goes into what I think he was trying to go for, like an edgier Witcher situation, where Gabriel's supposed to be like Geralt, only he swears a lot more, and there's so many more sexual innuendos, and it's just so edgy and cool. And I really just, I found it so cringy. I felt like it was someone's dad trying to impress their daughter's girlfriends or something. Like, hey guys, I'm cool. I'm not a dad. I'm a sexual being, and I got tattoos, and I rode a motorcycle once, a long time ago. And I just found it so cringy. This book would be half of its size if you took out all of the swearing and stupid name calling / banter between characters that just look like they're trying so hard. It's just trying too hard. And me making that dad comment, I am probably older than this author, I would imagine. I don't know how old he is. I looked at the back, and he feels the need to tell people he's 6'7". I honestly think I probably would be into the story if it wasn't trying so hard to come across as edgy. Kind of reminds me of like, remember there was like a time where magicians were really popular. Is it David Blaine? Oh God, I should look this up. And they were like edgy. We're magicians, but we're edgy. That is what he reminds me of. Let me look. I was going to try to pull a passage out of here just to let you hear the language used that is just so above and beyond. Like, I'm not against cursing, but this is just trying so hard. Like, there's so many phrases like twat waffle and stuff like that you could tell he's got like a list of words. He's like, yeah, I gotta put that in there. That's gonna make me look so cool. I don't know. I think that if all of that try hard wasn't in here, I might actually be into this story, but I decided just to take a pass. And for something this long, I think I need to really be into it. So that's all I'm gonna say about that. Next up, I read Kill River by Cameron Rubik. This is actually my second book that I'm reading by him. I read Disco Death Trap, Disco Death Trap in January, and that was like a roller rink New Year's slasher. This is a summertime slasher. This takes place in summer of '83, and we have our main character, Cindy. She's 13 years old, and she is being sent to summer camp because her parents think she is not personable enough. She doesn't socialize enough. So they're going to force it by sending her to this camp. And I mean, most of the camp is filled with like 10-year-olds and younger, and there's only a handful of other teenagers there. So there's 2 boys and another girl that she ends up making friends with, even though she's not like super great at making friends. They kind of pull her into their friend group, and they decide at one point, for reasons, that they are going to break out of the summer camp, take a raft, take it down the river, and try to connect with the highway so they can hitch a ride and then call their parents and tell them to come pick them up. As you can imagine, that brilliant plan does not go very well, and they end up stumbling into like what appears to be an abandoned water park. I will say that this author is really great at nailing the banter between teenagers. I mean, I've only read the 2, but they both take place in like the 80s. So I'm sure there's not all the slang that kids are using today, but I feel like their interactions are so genuine, like the playful insults back and forth, just the silliness, and you really kind of feel like these are real people, which I appreciate because in slashers they don't always do that. I will say that it took about halfway into this book to actually get to kind of some of the horror, and once it was there, it wasn't as interesting to me as the first half of the book. I wanted our kills to be a little bit more fun, instead of just being violent. Like a good slasher has to have fun kills, right? And there is a scene in here towards the end that I really did like. And then I realized when I read the author's note at the back that this is like a scene that's been playing in this author's head for a very long time. And it was obvious that it was kind of built around that scene. I just wish as much care and detail went into some of the other scenes with the killing. But overall, it was still a fun time. It's a fun summer read. I would give it 3.5 stars, rounded down to 3 for Goodreads. And last but not least, I decided to give Cujo by Stephen King a shot. This is a book that I never really thought that I would be into because I just don't find dogs scary. I love dogs. I mean, I understand why some people have a fear of dogs, especially if they were attacked or had something happen to them when they were younger. But I just don't have a fear of dogs at all. Like, it doesn't matter how big the dog is. Like, I am the idiot that it would probably die because I tried to boop Cujo on the nose. So I don't know, for that and because of Old Yeller, I think I just never really decided to pick this up. But I heard it would be a good summer read, so I ended up listening to this. First of all, I will say I was surprised that Cujo is a Saint Bernard because I always see stuff like this, or they always show like close-up of the teeth, which make it kind of look like a Doberman or some other dog, not a Saint Bernard. And to me, a Saint Bernard just looks like such a big teddy bear of a dog. But I think that is part of the reason that that dog was used, and also the sheer size of the dog. The dog is like 200 pounds. This book is a book that Stephen King does not even remember writing because he was, I think, deep into alcoholism or drug use or both at this time. And it's pretty crazy to write an entire book and not remember any of it. That said, I've never seen the movie or anything like that. I just thought that Cujo was supposed to be this evil or killer dog, and I just couldn't buy that fact that a dog could be evil or kill for no reason. But I decided to give it a shot. And I will say that this book is not really about Cujo. Cujo is obviously what brings this story to a head, and I mean, he is in the story, but most of the story is really about this small town and 2 different families within the small town and all of like the drama that they're going through. So we have the family that owns Cujo, and it is just a family of 3, a mother, a father, and a son who is, I think, about 10 years old. And the dad is a total asshole. He's very abusive. He uses fear to control both his wife and his son. And then we have another family that is also a mother, a father, and a son. And the son is really young. He's like 4 years old. And the mother is having an extramarital affair because she is a bored housewife. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of ugliness there talking about these families. And in a way, it reminds me a lot of like Needful Things, where we're just having to hear about this small town and small town people problems, I guess. Like just the drama that is going on in these families, or it kind of reminds me of Salem's Lot, where we have this female that is being unfaithful to her husband. And I feel like, I don't know if he was working out some things there, but I don't know. It's not the most pleasant thing to read about. I know I'm reading horror, but that's not the kind of horror that I like to read about. So Cujo is actually a very good boy. He's the bestest boy, but he ends up getting rabies, and that's what causes him to act the way that he does in this book and causes him to attack things. So all of the book is really just telling background story up until that point. And if you're not into like these little drama things, you're probably not going to be into this book, because the main thing with Cujo is towards the end. I will say once it gets there, it definitely keeps you on the edge of your seat, and it is very interesting. And I will also say that the ending did surprise me. I was surprised at how it ended out. A few things that stood out to me is Stephen King's obsession with writing about farting in his books. I wish that I had this on my Kindle because I would love to do the little search thing where I search the word fart and see how many times it was like named in this book. I feel like fart to King is what a rump is to layman. And I just don't understand the obsession with why it needs to be in all of his books. And in this book in particular, like, it's in there a lot. The infidelity thing I found really annoying, not because of the infidelity itself, but once these two characters kind of have it out and like get everything out in the open, the woman is super manipulative to the man. And I don't know if I felt like I was supposed to take her side, but I was so annoyed by her behavior because as soon as she tells him, it's really just to soothe her own feelings of knowing that things are going to be okay. Like, she doesn't even give him time to let this settle and think about it. She's like, but we're going to be okay, right? Tell me you're going to be okay. Tell me you can get over this. Tell me. And I'm like, shut up. You don't have the right to ask this of him. He is processing this information. You caused this. You don't get to like control this. And I found it very annoying. She was also later on annoying with her son. The whole reason they end up in the situation that they do is because she wants to leave her 4-year-old son home alone while she goes in her car to go do something, because it could inconvenience her if he's with her and something happens. And she just, the thought she has about her 4-year-old son who doesn't want to stay home alone because he's scared. I don't know. I was over her. I was over her. I could not root for her. And then in the other family, of course, the guy that is such a piece of shit. You just want to see him die awfully and very graphically. And I did not get my wish. I don't want to spoil anything, but it was not enough. These characters did not suffer enough for me. Overall, I say it's a solid book. It's not one of my favorite King books. It's not my least favorite. I'd probably give it a 3.5 star. Pretty crazy he could write a whole book that ends up being kind of like a household name. Like, I feel everybody's heard the name Cujo before. Even if, like me, they'd never read it or saw the movie, they know what Cujo is. And you don't even remember writing it. Like, that's pretty crazy. So I have just pretty much been mood reading everything that I want to mood read, which kind of has caused me to start a bunch of books. I just feel like starting books, and then never finishing. But if we're keeping up with the Sharks, Slashies, and Monsties readathon that I have in my journal, I have hit the prompts. Read a cosmic horror. That was with Someone You Could Build a Nest In. Read a book set in a small town. That was Cujo. Read a book that could be emotional. I think that would be A Strange Sally Diamond. Read a book with a scary cover. I mean, I think it's just cool, but I could see how that would be scary. Read an animal attack book. That was Cujo. And read a book with an unreliable character, which I put Strange Sally Diamond because she could not remember her past. So I don't think I'm having the best reading month so far. I don't even know what I would pick as my top book out of these. Probably Strange Sally Diamond or Kill River. I am currently reading other things, and at the end of the month, I will absolutely check in and go over the second half of my month and tell you what my favorite book of the month was. If you've made it this far, leave me a dog emoji because Cujo really was a good boy. Poor Cooch. And also let me know what your favorite read of the month has been so far. Also, if you have any opinions about this, let me know. If you think I made a mistake DNFing it, if you agree with me, I don't know. I still kind of feel the pull to read more of this, but yeah, give me your opinions on that. All right, that's all I got for you today. I hope you're having a great reading month and a great summer so far. Don't forget, stay spooky.